Welcome to The Electorate. I am your host, Ian West. On today's episode, we are going to dive into the masculinity crisis in the United States, discuss Trump's most recent conquests, and at the end, we will have an interview with Democratic strategist and former Republican Ally Sammarco. Let's go ahead and dive into the masculinity crisis in the United States. So, on social media, I have seen several instances of people saying that young men are leaving the Democratic Party because they feel like the Democratic Party does not speak to their masculinity. They feel like Republicans are more masculine than Democrats. And I don't necessarily know that this is true, but it's the perception, so that's something that we've got to deal with. And you look at most recently in this past election, why did young men sort of identify with Donald Trump more than they identified with Kamala Harris and before that Joe Biden? And I think a lot of it is Trump is viewed as mostly masculine, primarily because right now he's winning. You know, he says a lot of things that come across as masculine, never giving up, never backing down, never apologizing, are all viewed as sort of more toxic masculine things. But he's viewed as masculine by the greater population, primarily because he's winning. He was levels above Biden right before Biden eventually dropped out of the race. And it just looked like he was just going to walk the election. He was not going to have to do anything at all. He was not going to have to put up any sort of defense. He was just going to watch Biden decline in front of his eyes and go on to victory. People watched that. People saw that. He looked like the more cognitively there candidate. He even though he really was not any sort of high level candidate or anything like that, he was still levels above Biden. So he looked like he was the one that was going to win. He looked like the stronger candidate. He looked like the one prepared to take over the country. And you kind of saw when it shifted away from Biden into Kamala Harris, Trump kind of went in defense mode, and you could tell he wished that he was still going up against Biden. But that sort of perception of Trump lingered over into those final 100 days. And now that sort of showcased this shift into a new masculinity crisis where young men are having a more difficult time figuring out what masculinity means in America in 2024 and now in 2025. Young men are no longer able to define themselves by their jobs or their positions in the household, specifically by their position relative to women, because while we do have a long, long way to go, women are rightly chipping away at gender inequality. Women have careers. Houses are now expected to be co-parented instead of just saddled, parenting being saddled on the woman. Women in sports are becoming more and more widespread. They're becoming more popular. They're becoming sex symbols. Like, these are things that were generally very male-focused ideals. So a lot of the things that Trump is saying, a lot of the things that the Republicans are saying tugs at this sort of sexist nostalgia of older generations, while also kind of showcasing to younger generations that, quote unquote, there was a better time to be a man in the United States. There was your masculinity is being stripped away and given to feminism, and like it's some zero-sum game. Like, you can't be masculine in the United States, but also, be a co-parent or also allow your wife to have a job or be a stay-at-home dad if that's your choice. But I feel like there is a much better way than this, and we really need to show that you can be a progressive and you can have more liberal leanings and still be masculine in society. We need men on the left who lift weights. We need men on the left who ride motorcycles, work on old pickup trucks, drink beer, just be one of the guys. And there's fucking plenty of us, man. Like, I do all of those things. And I consider myself very strong, masculine individual, and I'm very comfortable with myself. But those same men need to be able to be co-parents. Those same men need to give deference to their wives or partners in household decisions. They need to understand that their masculinity is not defined by their position to someone else. Their masculinity is defined by whatever they want it to be, whatever makes them confident, whatever makes them sort of who they are, the strong, confident individual capable of doing whatever that person wants to do. That's what being masculine is. And we've got to show that. We've got to give something that people can identify with, because right now people seeking sort of a masculine party are not going to shift towards Democrats. It's just not happening right now. So, that, and I think I think things will change a little bit once Trump is gone. I think it'll be viewed a little bit differently once Trump is gone. But at the same time, we still need to give that subsection of voters, we need to give them a home. We need to show them that you can belong in the Democratic Party and still be masculine. You can care about other people, not hate immigration, not hate women's rights, not try to roll back all these old laws that put women and people of color in marginalized positions. You can do those things and still be a masculine individual. So, that's kind of what I want to say on masculinity. It's something that has to be addressed in the party going forward, because that we do see that shift away from Democrats. We need somebody in the next election. We need candidates who are cool. We need candidates who are young. We need candidates who do. And even in the 2024 election with Tim Walz, we did a little bit of that. We had that one little video of him working on his truck, and then they just fucked it off and never came back to it again. Like, they just nerfed him and silenced him, and that was really kind of his point, was to be like a guy, to be a dude, and they kind of just put that on the back burner and didn't come back to it for really any amount of time at all. So something we need to work on, and something that needs to be addressed in the Democratic Party, is how to speak to young male voters who are in search of a masculine identity, but who also, want to vote, want to be part of a party. So we touched on this on the last episode on the current MAGA civil war that's ongoing now. The H-1B visa debate has kind of died, as news tends to do in this day and age. It gets talked about to death for, at maximum a week, and then it's gone and it's off to the next thing. But so now we've got Trump shifting towards nothing policy related, nothing any sort of like. He's doubling down on wanting to annex Canada. He wants to buy Greenland. He wants to take control of the Panama Canal, and he wants to rename the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America. Okay, like, this is more or less the bullshit that I expect from Donald Trump. And now that he has an administration that is not people with any experience governing basically whatsoever, this is more or less the shit you're going to get for the next 4 years. It's stuff that the base will eat up. They can make their fucking memes on the Gulf of America. They can, show a map with the, star-spangled flag covering all the territory of Canada. And, they'll think it's funny, and that's sort of manly, and, we're so, like, we're just going to take over the world, blah, 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 without, It's obviously none of this is going to happen. In my opinion, you can call it the Gulf of Mexico, the Gulf of America. You can call it the fucking Gulf and just end it there. It doesn't really matter. But, this is the sort of low level stuff that I think you can expect, because going back to the MAGA civil war that just occurred on H-1B visas, when it comes to saying, okay, immigration is bad, we want less immigration, MAGA mostly agrees on that. When it comes to actually putting out policy or coming up with some way to do that, they fall apart because none of them know how to do it. And I think you're going to see these same things. So we already saw today a report that Elon Musk, cutting the $2 trillion, Doge cutting $2 trillion from spending, basically said, yeah, I don't think we're going to be able to do that. Well, no fucking shit, man. We all knew you weren't going to be able to do that. You knew you weren't going to be, well, maybe you didn't. Maybe you thought you were just so fucking brilliant that you would be able to do it, but it's obvious that you can't, right? And this is, it's just so, it's just, I think this is what you can expect going forward with Donald Trump's administration, is a lot of talk with very little substance behind it. Because in his first term, at least at the beginning, he tried to surround himself with people who knew how to govern. Now he started firing them pretty early on, swapping them out, and presumably he's kind of run through his list of people that have any experience whatsoever in the government. So he's resorted to Vivek Ramaswamy and Elon Musk and Kash Patel, and fucking Tulsi Gabbard has experience, but not with national intelligence, other than al-Assad being an apologist for him and buddy there, and pro-Russian, that's her international experience. But these people they're going to have no idea what to do. Donald Trump has no policy positions whatsoever, aside from lowering taxes and, getting rid of illegal immigrants and reducing immigration altogether, probably, honestly. But when you talk about, creating a tax plan, what's he going to do? Like, take Paul Ryan's tax plan from 2017, 2018, stamp some new dates on it and reapply it? That would be my guess. I don't know who the hell else is going to come up with a tax plan that's of any importance or any ability to get what he wants to get done. When you talk about immigration, we've already looked at the Laken Riley Act, which is, sign it or don't, co-sponsor it as a Democrat or don't, all this stuff. I don't really know. I've looked at the bill. It doesn't seem to really offer much. People are arguing that, the Department of Homeland Security through ICE or through any other agent will take, the Laken Riley Act as meaning that they can basically take ICE, go out and accuse anybody that they think might be an illegal immigrant of theft, detain them, and then sort out the ones who are here illegally and deport them. And while that may sound like, okay, well, they were here illegally, so what does it matter? We need to get them out. But it is going to cause undue harm to people who aren't illegal immigrants, because they're going to assume that somebody is a legal immigrant just by the color of their skin and the location they are in the United States, detain them for who knows how long. I mean, we have no idea. There's nothing in the bill that says how long that they're allowed to detain them. They don't even have to be convicted of a crime, okay, just accused. So, you can accuse anybody of theft. You can accuse anybody of a crime, especially, the Department of Homeland Security with very little oversight. So, yeah, I mean, you could see, and ICE does some of that already. That's where the abolish ICE came in years and years ago, and that ended up being pretty deeply unpopular messaging, because people do have very strong opinions on immigration. Most people, they're very, very pro-immigration, but it's got to be done legally. You ask people that have done immigration in the United States legally, and they are probably even stronger proponents of legal immigration. And it's not quite a pull the ladder up behind you sort of thing, but it's like I went through all the channels that I was supposed to. I did everything the right way. You need to do it the right way too. And that's sort of, that's what we're talking about with immigration, because Democrats do not have good messaging on Democrats do not have good messaging on immigration right now. They've got to figure out their position. I think a lot of the Democrats that voted yes for the Laken Riley Act, I think a lot of the Democrats that co-sponsored the bill, they might piss off some of the deep base of the left, but I think it's going to be more popular among undecided and sort of middle-class, working-class voters across the country, because we saw, even in places like Pennsylvania, even in places like North Carolina, where I am, that immigration was an issue that people were very concerned about. Rightly or wrongly, it doesn't really matter. You're not going to change what these people are concerned about or what these people feel is important. But yeah, that's what it is. Up next, we have our interview with former Republican and current Democratic strategist, Ally Sammarco. On today's episode, we have the wonderful Ally Sammarco. Ally, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So Ally is a former Republican and current Democratic strategist. So, Ally, for our listeners who don't maybe know your story, can you go over, how you went from being a former Republican who voted for Trump in 2016 to now a Democrat?
Yes. So it's kind of a long story. I go way back to when I was probably about 14 or 15 years old, is when I first got engaged in politics. And for most people, that's pretty young.
Yeah.
But it was a little unusual because my dad was extremely interested in politics. And he was kind of the person that I got most of my information from or my news from. And we were very close. And we would spend a lot of time in the car together listening to conservative talk radio. Growing up, I'm hearing, Sean Hannity, Rush Limbaugh, Mark Levin is another big one. And I'm listening to them and hearing their take on the news and the world. And it was terrifying for any kid, And so I also was exposed to a lot of really insane conspiracy theories just listening to them.
Yep.
Such as, the big ones like Barack Obama wasn't born in America. At the time, Barack Obama was president. So it was a lot of those types. Even insane ones like Michelle Obama is secretly a man, which, at the time I'm hearing this and I'm like, oh my gosh, like what is, this is crazy.
Yeah.
And so, that's, how I got my introduction into politics. So as a young, teenager, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, we gotta do something about this. And so in 2012, he was running against Mitt Romney, and that was my first time really getting activated. And I started volunteering for Mitt Romney. I couldn't vote yet, obviously, but I went to one of his rallies, and, I thought Barack Obama was out to destroy the country, and I thought Democrats were out to destroy the country. So that was my mission, save America. And you can see that now, even with Donald Trump, he's basically perpetuated that Democrats are trying to destroy the country. So, so I was very engaged. I was volunteering. I was interning with my local Republican Party in Arlington, Virginia. And it wasn't until 2016 when Donald Trump was running. I was a little skeptical of him. I was like, I'm not really sure about this guy yet. He says he's a Republican. I'm like a big believer in traditional Republican values, but I'm not sure exactly where he kind of fits in there yet. And so I wasn't sure about him, but eventually, as the primaries went on, it was clear he was going to be the winner. And I knew I couldn't vote for Hillary Clinton. He had labeled her as, corrupt and her emails and all that stuff. And it worked. And so I was excited to go vote for him. It was my first time voting. And then when he won, I was ecstatic. And I went downtown to the inauguration in D.C. With some friends. And I was ecstatic. And there was so many protesters there. And I remember thinking, sucks to be them. I had my head held high. We were the winners. We won. And I thought he was a little unhinged. He was a little different, obviously. But I did believe that the people around him would keep him in check. And they would be the adults in the room. If there was ever something that came up where he was, needing guidance, they would be there.
Sure.
And then I realized quickly that that was not the case.
Right.
And he actually would just fire people if he didn't agree with him. And so I was, I don't know if I made the right choice here. I'm now kind of thinking about this. He's like firing people around him. Everything seems to be kind of like chaotic in the White House. It's not really normal. And so I kind of took a step back. I was like, you know what? I'm not going to be super engaged in Republican politics at the moment. Just kind of I became a little disaffected. And then it wasn't until 2020 when COVID hit, I realized how dangerous he truly was. I couldn't ignore it anymore. I couldn't turn off the news. This is something that was impacting everybody. And I was like, he is so dangerous. He's going to kill a lot of people. And we cannot let him get reelected. And so I was all in for Joe Biden. I started volunteering for him. And then after Joe Biden won that election, I was even more engaged because we just had a big victory. And I quit my job. And then I got a job on the Democratic Party of Virginia's campaign in 2021, working for Terry McAuliffe, which we lost that race. But didn't matter to me because, I was all in at that point. And so the rest is kind of history from there, but that's a short little rundown.
Yeah, and so that's not super unlike my story. So I grew up in kind of the same circumstance in that my family was very conservative, and it was Fox News every day I came home from school. It was Fox News on the TV, and it was at the time like Glenn Beck and that ilk, and I kind of got the same exposure that you did. And it wasn't really until college that I sort of started to rethink that. And my first year of college was right around Obama's first election. So I kind of, I wasn't crazy about Obama at the time because I still had some of that residual conservative viewpoints, but it was definitely, back then in both Obama elections, the Republicans running against him were quite a bit different than what we have now. But I had kind of maybe a longer term flip from Republican to Democrat. So you didn't have like an individual moment really, but you had kind of a trigger, right? Stuff that had built up to this point, and then COVID hits, and you're like, okay, now I just can't agree with this, right?
Yeah. There wasn't like one particular moment where I was like all in and then I was, all out. I think I was, like I said, skeptical from the beginning, and then I kind of got like grouped into like the group mentality, which is MAGA. It's like this group of like, we're in, and if you're not with us, you're out.
It's cool.
So I wanted to be in, and then over time I'm like, yeah, this is not what I signed up for at all. I don't even know like what this party is at this point.
Yeah. So, and I'm interested in this because I had the same. What was the response like from like friends and family on that shift? As someone myself, like I said, who grew up in a conservative household, in a very conservative town, it was a challenge for me. What was that like for you?
Yeah. I think, the overall reaction was good. It was positive. A lot of my friends were already Democrats. So I spent a lot of time arguing and debating growing up with them. And I think some of them were like very proud of me, and they were glad and like, what took you so long kind of thing. But my immediate family is very supportive. I do have extended family that absolutely love Donald Trump, think he's the greatest thing to ever walk the earth. And I don't speak with them anymore at their own choosing.
Yeah.
So, that's not something I would want to get between family, but unfortunately that's just kind of the culture of how it is right now.
Yeah, I kind of went through. So my extended family is more sort of on the liberal side, and my direct family is more conservative. They were relatively supportive, I guess. We still get into arguments, but it never devolves into like a problem, I guess. So yeah, it's interesting to see. And like you said, it's good to have friends that are like sort of proud of you and accepting of that, because that is a difficult decision. Like people don't realize it is how easy it is to get entrenched on one side, and how difficult it is to be like, hey, I was wrong, or not even necessarily I was wrong, but I've learned since then, and now I've changed my decision. So
yeah, I think admitting you were wrong is one of the hardest things to do, but it's one of the most important things, because things change all the time. We learn new information, and if we're not, acknowledging that, then we're doing ourselves a disservice. So
exactly, people change too. Like we have different priorities as we grow and move into a career or start a family, or as a father of a daughter, I would have a hard time explaining to her down the road that I voted for Donald Trump, and so it's some of that stuff can change over time. So you recently launched a newsletter, which I'm subscribed to, called Today's American News. So this really breaks down kind of the daily goings on in politics in a very succinct and easy to read format. What led you to kind of launching this newsletter? Because I do see something like that as something that's very, very valuable to people that aren't chronically online or don't consume political news all the time.
Yeah. And that's the majority of Americans, right?
Exactly.
There's really just us in a bubble who are chronically like refreshing the news. And I think most people don't want to watch the news 24/7, nor can they, because they're at work, they're busy. And I think cable news has gotten exhausting for a lot of people. It's kind of just the same, shtick, and it's 24/7, and it's just like, it's a lot for people. So
it is.
And then on the other end, you have Twitter, X. I still call it Twitter. which has become, a cesspool of right-wing disinformation, and it's like conspiracy theories a lot, and it's really hard to sift through.
It is.
And so it becomes more of a job for people to have to sift through constantly, trying to figure out what's going on, what's the news, without a spin on it.
Yep.
So the whole point of the newsletter is that every night something comes into your inbox that kind of breaks down the top headlines of the day, about 4 top headlines, and then some entertainment news as well. We throw in there. But yeah, it's really just like a succinct way for people, like after they're home, after they put their kids to bed or whatever, that they can open up their inbox and see kind of a breakdown of what's happened that day, and they don't have to sift through the news. And it's not, it's not a job for them. It's just easy, and it's right there for them.
And where, if people are interested in signing up for that, where can they go to hit that up?
Yeah, just go to today'samericannews.com and you can subscribe right there. So it's free, so don't have to pay anything. It just comes right to your inbox. If you do want to pay, that's great, and it helps keep the newsletter alive, but it's totally free otherwise. And it'll come in daily around like 8 o'clock every night. So yeah.
Like I say, everybody, if you can pay for it, try to help and pay. It keeps this kind of stuff, keeps this stuff going. Because like Ally said, when we're on Twitter, X, Facebook, which I'm not even on anymore, but I've seen it, it's just disinformation, and it just takes, for me, who's somebody who's chronically online, it takes so much to build an ecosystem that I can trust the information. And even still, it's verify everything.
Right. And now you see Meta, they just said they're not going to be checking anymore, and like, that's the exact opposite of what we need right now.
We're going in the wrong, and it constantly seems like that we're going in the wrong direction with all these different media outlets. And that kind of takes us to the next question. So we saw a big discrepancy in the right-wing media ecosystem and the left-wing media ecosystem in this past presidential election, to the point where people are suggesting that might be the primary, or at least one of the big reasons that Kamala Harris ended up losing. How do you think Democrats can improve in the way that they reach voters in this digital age with podcasts and just YouTube and everything that sort of we were missing this time around?
Yeah. So I have a little bit of a unpopular opinion, I guess, which is that I don't think that Kamala Harris lost because of the media ecosystem necessarily. Mm-hmm. But I do think that there were a lot of people that were very unhappy with the way that the Biden administration was going, rightfully or wrongfully so. People were unhappy, and they were looking for ways to validate their concerns or, to echo their concerns. And I think a lot of people flocked to, Ben Shapiro or Candace Owens or Charlie Kirk or even Joe Rogan, because these are the people that are talking about these issues that maybe Democrats were afraid to talk about.
Yep.
Which I think needs to change. We can't ignore things and pretend they're not happening.
Right.
Because then the only people telling the story are Republicans. And so I do think that helped grow these platforms a lot, like podcasts. So that's where we were kind of losing. But I do think that over the next 4 years, a lot of people are going to be frustrated with the Trump administration. I'm being one of them. So, and I think that they're going to be looking for avenues to get their frustrations out and to, like I said, echo their concerns. And so that's where we need to be ready as Democrats. We need to have these media ecosystems already in place.
Yeah.
And I do think that we are a little bit behind there. I think the Harris campaign did really good on TikTok, really well on TikTok. So I'm just really proud of them there. But I do think we need to be doing more than that. And people like Midas Touch, for example, I think are doing a great job of expanding the network. They have 3 million subscribers on YouTube, and they're bringing in more people. And that's what we need to be doing. We need to have more Midas Touches. And we also have a lot of young Democratic influencers that you've seen kind of come up, and we need to embrace them as well, because people are going to be looking for, where can I go to get information? Where can I trust, like you said? And that's where we need to be ready for that over the next 4 years.
Yeah, I think we definitely have a lack of the same media ecosystem that the right wing does. But at the same time, you're 100% spot on. we lost the election, and you can basically probably boil it down to one single issue, and that's inflation. People just were not happy with inflation, and the Biden administration and then Harris taking over from there. Whether or not you agree she did a good enough job messaging at that, that was what people's viewpoint was. So, we need a system of people who are able to communicate or help whatever candidate that might be communicate and reach voters where they are, which is digital, which is online, it's streaming, it's all that. And there is some of that. You've got like Hassan Piker out there who's reaching a younger generation audience. He's a bro, he's a gamer. Like people relate to that, and that's kind of what we really need.
Yeah, and I do think cable news is completely dying. I myself, I'm like, I don't want to turn it on because it's exhausting. So they're looking for other places to get their news from, and like that's where we need to have candidates on different platforms. Even unconventional platforms, because that's where people are going to be watching. And to touch on the inflation thing, I think that one of the things we failed at massively was not only ignoring the inflation thing or like rarely talking about it, but being like, oh, it's not that bad. Look at the stock market. Look at, the NASDAQ, whatever. It's like record highs. People don't look at like the broad economy and think like, oh, okay, so we're doing well. They look at their own personal finances and their own personal situation, and that's how they get their gauge of the economy. They're not looking at the stock market. So that's something we need to change is like, people's personal income and their personal taxes, like that's how they're gauging how well the economy is doing.
Yeah, and that's like, I should kind of shout that one from the rooftops quite a bit, because that's it. You're not going to convince people that whatever their lived experience is not correct. You're not going to tell them that your grocery bill being up is not what you should be looking at. You should be looking at the stock market. How many people invest in the stock market in the United States? It's like 20% of the country or something like that. It's nothing. So you're 100% right. It's stop trying to convince people, that your message is correct and theirs is wrong, and meet them where they are and listen to them and tailor your messaging in a way that speaks to what their complaint is. And that's what, Democrats seem to have such a means-tested messaging. Like it's just like, how can I impress the more liberal side of the equation with my super liberal policies or messaging, and instead we've got to talk to the greater population, the working class vote, all the people that have real life everyday problems that aren't consuming more than 10 or 15 minutes of political news a week.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, these aren't people, the majority of people aren't following every little, breaking news update. They're just living their lives. And so, yeah, their daily concerns are the ones that we need to be speaking to and addressing. And that's how you get people engaged again. So many people are disaffected, like how I was at one point, and our job is to get them engaged.
Yep. And, I've seen on sort of Twitter, people talking about the fallacy of the voter is never incorrect. And, I personally, for me, I put a lot of stock in that, because you're not going to convince people what they should care about to change what they should care about or change the way they experience things, but you can change the way you message to them. And I think we need to do a better job of not trying to change what is important to them, but talk about what's important to them in a meaningful way.
Yeah, you're 100% right.
All right, so it is early days in the new Trump administration, and he is, under 2 weeks from inauguration day, but we're already starting to see cracks form. We've seen the highly publicized MAGA civil war on X. We've seen reports of Donald Trump becoming tired of Elon Musk lurking around. He's now shifted to trying to annex various countries and rename the Gulf of Mexico, all this shit. What do you think? Do you anticipate this getting better when he gets into office, or do you think he's just going to struggle to govern? Do you think this is going to be basically the way it is all 4 years?
100% do not anticipate it getting better. That is for sure. If anything, we can look at the previous 2016 through 2020, and it was a disaster. It got worse. So just, these past few weeks have felt like 4 years already for most people, if you're paying attention, and I'm already exhausted. And to speak to Elon Musk and Donald Trump, no, it's not going to get better. It will get worse.
Yeah.
Anytime you put egotistical billionaires in a room together, it's not going to be smooth sailing. And you have Vivek Ramaswamy, and you also have so many people Donald Trump has appointed to his cabinet already are billionaires. Like the majority of them are billionaires. So this is like a situation of too many cooks in the kitchen where they're all going to want to have their input and their voice, and they're going to, it's going to be a power struggle. So right now we're just seeing a lot of like conceptualizing in the administration of like what they might want to do and some plans they have, and no real decision making yet. But once he's inaugurated and things get moving, there's going to be real decisions that need to be made. And I think it's going to be a lot of butting heads, a lot of power struggle, like I said. And we're probably going to see, a breakdown of especially that inner circle, Elon Musk, Vivek, and Trump, I think within the first year or so.
Yeah, I think I agree with that 100%, because like, and I've said it before, these billionaires aren't getting involved just to help Trump. They want something. They're going to expect something back from him. And if what his idea of what that should be does not mesh with theirs, there's going to be a butting of the head. So either Trump capitulates, which is not something he's very good at, or there's going to be a significant power struggle in there. And you can already see it, these broad ideas that, Vivek and Elon have about slashing spending and Doge and Trump, just letting them do that. And then they came out, I think today or yesterday, and said, well, I don't think we can quite cut that much from the budget now that we're looking at it. It's because they just have these really broad ideas and no policy whatsoever, like at all. And I just don't see that getting better with them, with everybody wanting something, but neither side having any idea actually how to do it.
Exactly. Yeah. And these are people that think they know better than everyone else too. And most of them don't have any government experience. So it's kind of a recipe for disaster if you think about it.
It really is. Like the first time around when he got elected, I wasn't quite as dire as a lot of people were. And I was like, okay, he's something, but he's going to surround himself with, more traditional Republican Party members. And he did a lot of that. There were some people that obviously just gave him favors and he put them in there, but he had some, Republicans around him who were not really entrenched, but career Republicans. And then he started firing them and everything, just swapping through them all. Now he's not even sort of pretending, he's putting Tulsi Gabbard up there, and he's got Pete Hegseth, who is a, Fox News contributor and a right-wing entrenched guy, but just the worst people you can possibly imagine. So there's just no way it can go well. I mean, just none.
Yeah, these aren't qualified people. These are loyal people to him. Yeah. And that's what matters most to him. So
yeah. All right. So before I let you go, everybody is already, before Trump's even taken office, is already looking for what we can do, not just in the midterms, but 2028. Do you have any potential candidates for 2028 that you're particularly excited about?
It's tough because so much can happen in 4 years. I think it was a shock to many that Joe Biden stepped down. Like no one could have predicted that part, and Kamala Harris and all that. But I think right now, if the election were held tomorrow, I think one of my top contenders is Gavin Newsom, governor of California. And I say that because I really respect the way that he operates. I think he plays dirty, and I think he's tough, and he fights back, and he's not afraid to do that. And I think that is something we are so missing in the Democratic Party right now. We are so scared of our own shadows, of any kind of pushback, of making these like tough, maybe unpopular decisions. I don't know. But I don't think we have room for that anymore, because that's not how the Republican Party is operating. And like even just, a few weeks ago, Joe Biden pardoned his son, Hunter Biden. And that was a tough decision for him. And I think he was worried about the public reaction. And not even 48 hours later, no one is talking about it, right?
Right.
Like we've moved on. Yeah. And so he could have let his son sit in jail just to save a little bit of pushback. And he could have done that. But instead, he made the tough decision for his own son, which I respect a lot. And 48 hours later, no one's talking about it. So this is the way, this needs to be our modus operandi, right? Like we can make these bold decisions. We can have bold leaders, and we can do what's right. And then people will move on. But we need to focus on our job and our values and our goals. And I think someone like Gavin Newsom, if not him, someone like him is who we need to lead.
Yeah, I agree with that a lot because, look at MAGA. Have they ever apologized for anything? Do they ever apologize for any decision they've ever made? No. And obviously there's, a little bit of value to that. And you look at Gavin Newsom, personality wise, he's not that dissimilar from Trump. I don't feel like he does not obviously just go up there and lie or anything like that, but he's kind of just a guy who's not afraid to say stuff. He's not afraid to speak his mind, and he's not afraid to be kind of bold. So we need that, so much of what we, like you said, being afraid of our own shadows is because we talk to these, super high up in the party liberals who are like, no, that's not good. That's not the population. That's not what most people think. So you might think that it's an unpopular policy, but when you actually go to try to implement it, you find out, oh, everybody's on board with this. Our stance on immigration in particular is one of them. We've got to figure that shit out. Like, we've got to find some way that we can understand what the people want with immigration, because it's a problem. We seem so afraid of going after it. So I like that. I like that style of pick. I want somebody who's fearless, who can go, toe to toe, who can just be bold and not be afraid of doing stuff that might be viewed as, difficult on X by the liberals on there.
Yeah, you're so right. I think especially with the immigration issue, Democrats are afraid to touch it in a lot of ways. They don't want to talk about it. They don't want to acknowledge any of, the issues at the border. So, and that ends up with the Republicans telling the story and telling the narrative. And so we need to we can't be afraid to talk about these tough issues, because the reality is that most people do want common sense solutions. And we need to own them. We need to own those issues, they need to become ours. We're the common sense party. We're coming up with, comprehensive reform for the border. And that needs to be us. We can't be the ones who are like, well, we don't want to offend anybody, so we're not going to talk. That can't work anymore. And so, we absolutely need to change our approach 100% over the next 4 years.
Yeah, you're totally right, because if, like you said, if we don't have a message, then 100% of the message on immigration is going to be whatever MAGA says. If we don't have anything that we're saying because we're afraid of offending somebody or afraid of coming up with a policy that's not popular, that message is 100% defined by the other party, and they have won, whether it's a popular opinion or not.
Exactly, because people are listening and they're like, well, at least they're talking about it.
Yep.
These people aren't talking about it, at least they are.
Yep. All right, Ally. Well, that was our last. Actually, I have one more for you. Very low stakes question right here. Okay, so I always like to ask people this: what are you listening to right now? What is on the playlist?
Song wise?
It's song, podcast, audiobook, whatever.
Oh, that's a good one. Song wise, this kind of sounds girly maybe, and you probably don't even know who this is, but I really like Gracie Abrams as of lately.
Okay.
She's kind of
the second person who's told me that, and I've never even heard of her.
Yeah. She kind of just came out, became more popular in the last year or so.
Okay.
She toured with Taylor Swift, so
all right.
I like her a lot. And then podcast-wise, one of my longtime favorite podcasts is actually not political. It's called How I Built This by Guy Raz, and it's one of my favorites. And it's all about how people built companies from the ground up and made them
cool.
really successful. So if you haven't listened to that one, give it a listen.
I have not. All right, I will definitely check that out. All right, well, thank you so much, Ally, for coming on, and hopefully we'll have you on again very soon.
Okay, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. It's fun.